Hello, Mike Carter here with Alaskan Embers reading number 5. But first, a couple of miscellaneous thoughts. I saw this in a pile of stuff my wife had. Look at that, Kodiak salmon. This is made of metal. And I don't know where this came from. I think my wife might have got it at a garage sale. I don't know. But the only meaning it might have for me is I fished off the north end of Carlick for 3 summers, and so that's interesting. I don't know. Interesting, right? So I'll set this down. Another thought I had, this Alaskan Embers reading is going to be out of Alaskan Embers 1. You can see the front of that, but you can look at the index. And I'm saying, well, that's interesting. You could have a whole Alaskan Embers reading where you just read what the index was and you said, wow, what is that? And I would say the same thing. Then I did Alaskan Embers 2 with some stuff there. And I named it Images Past, whatever that might mean. But there's an index there. And you see the index is longer. I'm getting more people to give me things with their names and their little biographies. Interesting things from 1993, 1994. Then I went on, got a little more nicer cover, Alaskan Embers 3, and it's got an index, sort of cool. I could just read that index and say, that's interesting. And just pick one here. I think I saw, no, it wasn't in this one, darn it. Oh yeah, it is. Vignettes of Kitty, Fort Yukon, 1941 to 1949. Kitty Quintard was my sister. She was the number 10, and Bobbie was 11, and I was 12. So Kitty had some very just short images of the smells she remembers back in Fort Yukon years ago when she was a child. And then you would have Alaskan Embers number 4, and 1993. You know, that's like 30 years ago. And you'd have an index, and you have people who give me stuff to put in there. Each one of those had articles by my brother Harry Carter and my sister Billy Oakland. And so that was always interesting because they'd write up stuff that were interesting to me anyhow, but also interesting to you. I say that because I'm in the process of writing a book of haiku, and I'm going to title it Haiku for Me, because that's really what the book is for, and you. So it'll be Haiku for Me and You by Michael Carter. But here's the interesting thing, and I showed this before, Alaskan Embers 5, and I don't have an index. I mentioned there's a couple of stories that are reflected here that would be in Alaskan Embers 5. I mentioned that on an earlier video. But then I was sitting there thinking, you know what? Perry Eaton, I think, gave me something that he wrote. And I went through each one of the indexes, and I didn't find it. Index to Alaskan Embers 1, 2, 3, and 4. And I didn't find it, and I was saying, and I vaguely remember some of his images in his write-up about him and a buddy, I think, running a boat down some channel around out Kodiak, because he was from Kodiak. He's got some really interesting stories, but I remember reading this story of his, so I'm thinking he must have given me a story for Alaskan Embers 5, and I must have bundled it up in that cardboard box, which is long lost. So I'm going to get a hold of him again. I got to call into him now and say, test his memory and say, hey, did you give me something back then that I didn't publish? And do you still have it available? And are you still willing to publish it? Hopefully it is, because I need to collect stories for Alaskan Embers, the next book. So it's been 30 years, but I'm going to do another one. And those were a couple of thoughts. So let me tell you, the next one in Alaskan Embers book, the next reading is Going to Alaska by Matyas. This is the one that when I saw it, I said, what? What is that story and who is that person? So I had a little history write-up on Gene Matyas. I went back and I read it. It says, I was born and raised on a farm in North Carolina. My happiest times were spent riding my Pinto mare and tending to assorted cats and dogs. At the tender age of 19, I met and married a handsome young Air Force sergeant. We lived in Washington, D.C., England, Texas, and Alaska. And along the way, had 5 children and 4 grandchildren. Remember, this was 30 years ago. I am an artist specialized in pastel landscapes. Recently, I've devoted a great deal of time to writing, attending a class at the Anchorage Senior Center taught by Joan Townsend, Alaska's poet laureate. Thanks, Joan. I love it. So then I remembered, I went to these, back then, I was really hustling to get stories, vignettes by people to publish. And I went to this senior center writing, Anchorage Senior Center class that they were having. And they probably had maybe on the average 10 plus or minus people there. And so I tried to get them all to give me stories. And obviously Gene Matyas responded. But also that's the time I met, oh man, no, come on, Mike, think hard. Oh, Reuben Gaines. And Reuben Gaines, I thought, was long gone, because when I was a little kid in Fairbanks in the 1950s, I'd rush home either during lunch hour or after school to listen to Conversations Unlimited with Reuben Gaines. I loved it. And I think he told us various stories or something during that, and I loved him. I was just a little kid. And I loved Reuben Gaines. And there he was at the senior center. And I actually got him to agree to let me put one of his things in my book. And here it is. He let me put words are for storytellers. That'll be later read. And that was awful nice of him. And I have a story or two about Reuben because he passed away not too long after that, a month or two after that, but my wife and I were able to cajole him into coming to our house for dinner. And he was protective of his time, so we really had to cajole. But I think he thought my wife was good looking. I don't know. Anyhow, so we got Going to Alaska by Gene Matyas. And did you catch what I was trying to do? I'm trying to get you out there to send me stories, Alaska flavored, or poems or vignettes that I can put in the Alaskan Embers. And this is the first time I'm saying this. We lost my sister Bobbie about a month ago, and her daughter Kai and I got together, and I said, I think it would be really neat if we had family or friends or whoever wanted to give us something that they remember about Bobbie, or some short story, some vignette, and then we put those into this next Alaskan Embers. So this is the first time I'm telling you as a community, give me a call, get set up, write something up on my sister Bobbie or something else, and get it to me so I can actually do an Alaskan Embers again. So let's find this, Going to Alaska by Gene Matyas. It says page 9. Let's see if that was right. It's really easy to make a mistake when you think you're doing things. Spring break. There it is. Spring break. You see how short it could be? Or it could be shorter than that, or longer. Spring break. That's not the right one. That's Dutch Longnecker. What the heck? Did I have a mistake in here? Oh, no. Well, let me look at page 9 and see if I can find it. Oh, I'm sorry. Joan Matyas is up there in this corner. It's a short poem. So I'll read that. So you can be as short or as long as you want to when you send something to me. Going to Alaska by Gene Matyas. Here we are, stopped along the roadside, pioneers heading north in our covered wagon. Well, a Chevy 1958. Tailgate down becomes a kitchen. I'm cooking on a Coleman stove. The children, restless from long hours riding, chase each other and imaginary grizzly bears. My husband checks the oil and water, scrapes the windshield free of bugs. We eat our dinner from a paper plate load up, and hit the road again. Tomorrow night we'll stop somewhere, rent a room, wash away the Alaskan dust, get a good night's sleep. It's a long, long drive from Texas. Call me, Mike Carter, 907-240-6044. Goodbye.